Hey Teresa, I see your comment there. I was a little late getting set up this afternoon, and my microphone was unplugged. My camera was put away, so hopefully you can see me now. I was just getting that stream started there, but yeah, looking forward to meeting you then as well. So, anyways, just kind of getting started here. You're probably one of the first people to stop by, and so we're kind of just getting rolling. So, give me just one second. Well, good afternoon and welcome to the Katmai Adventure Show. I actually just noticed a mistake. So one of the emails, the title says 5:30 and then the email says 5. It really is supposed to be 5, but I think 5:30 will probably work out today because I was a little late getting started anyways. So not a big deal. For those of you watching the replay, I apologize. You'll want to skip forward, and I'll pin a comment letting you know to do that. Skip forward to about 16 minutes because that's really when we're going to get started here. So, I didn't have too many interesting questions come up this week. We are starting to see an uptick in people thinking about planning for 2026. So, if you are considering that and you're not on the schedule yet, now is a good time to start making those reservations or start thinking about it or planning the trip, whatever that means for you and where you're at. Just because if you do wait too much longer, we will run out of dates for 2026. Similar to not as popular as Brooks Lodge, but we're pretty close. We tend to run out of lodging sometime about 6 to 8 months. We basically end up with nothing left. Um, and about 12 months is kind of when it starts to become difficult to, or like trying to work dates to make sure that we can accommodate as many people as we can into the season because it is quite busy. So that's probably one of the first things I just want to talk about is just that. So if you are thinking about a 26 travel date, or because maybe you've been notified that you didn't win the lodge lottery for next year, but you still you're tired of waiting and you're ready to go, you can always come back. But if next year is your year, then I think now is a great time to start planning that. So I would highly recommend going ahead and making that jump onto that as soon as you're ready. And I apologize here for just one second. I want to monitor this stream, make sure that it's working, going out on Facebook. Okay, it should be, but let's just double check. Yeah, looks like it is here, so no problem there. Well, cool. Since that's going out, I'm not going to worry too much about it. Like I said, I'm going to kind of keep the pace slow here for just a minute because I do think that people are going to get notified, and that it looks like the show's um, supposed to be starting around 5:30, not 5:20. So I'm going to just kind of hang back for a second and make sure that we don't get too far too much depth into anything. I did also invite a couple people to jump on here that I spoke with this week. Don't know if they'll make it or not, but if you do make it, thanks for being here. Really appreciate it. And hopefully we can provide some valuable insight for you. And we can cover a wide range of topics, whatever you guys are looking to read about, talk about, see. Again, I encourage this is really a two-way street. This is a conversation. We do host a monthly webinar where I'm teaching you guys how to plan this trip and what to expect and what it costs. This is not that. This is just meant to be a place to hang out, talk about Brooks Camp, talk about Katmai, talk about Alaska, and we can talk about other stuff as well. If somebody here wants to talk about fishing, but most of the people that follow this Facebook page and who follow me from this part of what we do, you're here to learn about Katmai. So we kind of stay focused on that. in that area. If anything volume-wise is off, let me know. It looks like it's all okay. But if you guys can't hear me or anything, just let me know in the comments, and I will respond and correct whatever is going on there. However, I need to do that. So here on Lightroom, I've got some pictures just pulled up from this past season. I did have someone ask about coming in late August. She actually ended up booking some late August dates, and some of my best pictures came from that time. Obviously, if you want falls pictures, then you really are restricted to a very short window, which is going to be July. So this happened to be the middle of July here. July 17th is the date on this picture itself. And I think several of these pictures were probably taken around that date or on it. And so that's really kind of, you need to keep that in mind when you're planning this trip. If falls is a priority, not necessarily bear seeing or bear viewing, but primarily at the falls, then you will be restricted to a relatively small window. There is a chance, and even into September, there was a couple of bears up there. The big ones, Chunk and 747, pretty much hung out at the falls all the way to the end of the year. But because there's so few fish jumping and so few fish migrating still, they've kind of settled into wherever spot they're going to do their thing. On the Brooks River, there's not as many moving up and down the falls. Some of them fall over, some of them are still trying. There is some silver salmon that try to make the jump. And there'll be a bear or two up there, but there's just not enough to support 20 or 30 bears at the falls at one time later into September or August. But that is not to say that there is not a good opportunity for bear viewing late in the season. So this picture is September 9th, and I can make them bigger, but I'm not editing anything right now. Just showing you guys what's out there, because the gal that booked with us today for a late August date, there's lots of bears still around. They typically do their walkabouts somewhere between, I usually would say between August 10th and August 25th. It's kind of that. They may be there, they may not. Different amounts of salmon, different times of the year result in a different total number of bears still present at the falls. Although some bears never left. So like Chunk, I don't know. I mean, there might have been a day or two that he wasn't seen there, but he basically camped out at the falls the entire month of August and September. Once he showed up in July, he never left. He might have been gone for a day or two, but that's basically it. Whereas like Grazer and the one cub, they left like August 10th, 12th. I can't remember. I took a picture of them walking up the trail. I was one of the last people to see them before they returned from the walkabout later that year, or last year. So it just kind of depends really there in terms of total number of bears. It's going to be determined by how many salmon are still present near the falls for that August. And then once we move into September, that's kind of when the bears return. So I think this is Goalie, if I'm correct. And that would be a September 7th date. Here's a September 1st. It's Chunk, and I can't remember who got bit, because a bunch of bears got bit by the Beady Bunch last year. So on their back end. So there was quite a few. And I want to say it might have been Walker, but I'm not the bear identification expert. Chunk's pretty easy to identify because of the scar, but besides that. So this is September 1st, so this is just a couple days later from after that gal booked for this year. But like I said, there's bears present basically the entire time from once the summer starts until, once the fish arrive all the way until the end. So it's not necessarily a really big deal. And it just kind of depends on how many how much of the crowds are you willing to fight? How much time on the platform are you willing to give up? So that's really what's happening in July. And so that's kind of ultimately what's happening there. That's like a neat picture. This is a sow from a different river on Naknek Lake. It's here kind of wandering around. This looks like a July date, it is. And then I kind of want to see if I can give you guys an early season preview. It's a nice picture. So if you guys got questions about, gear that I use for these, now's a good time because I've got it all pulled up here and we can see it, and I can tell you what my settings were for the camera. If anybody's got camera questions, feel free to ask. I do get a lot of people ask, or I see people ask on a couple of Facebook groups, do I need a big camera lens, or can I use my phone? For the first few years that I was there, I did not own expensive camera gear, and I did just use my phone. And you can get good pictures. This picture, like this at this quality, would be difficult with a phone because of the amount of zoom that's taking place to make this happen. And just to be honest with you guys, I mean, even though the phone says, maybe like my Android has like a 200 megapixel camera, which sounds like it would be good in theory, and it might be. The problem is that the sensor size on your phone camera is really small compared to the sensor on a professional grade or even a beginner grade type camera, that the image quality will never be the same, if that makes sense. It's just not possible. When you start to zoom in, you get kind of like everything looks a little bit soft, and maybe it's not as in focus as it looked. And it'll look good on Instagram or your phone, but if you make the picture bigger, let's say to frame it somewhere, or even to make it, like a 11 by 17 poster or something like that, there will be noticeable reduction in quality from that photograph to this one. So it, taken from the same spot, same lighting conditions, everything. They're not apples to apples all of the time. You can get away with a lot, but it won't come out just as good. So it's just kind of the way that it is. Phone cameras take great pictures and great video. I don't want to take that away. I know I've got one on here somewhere. I'll see if I can find it of exactly that. It's a phone picture. This one. Actually, this is not a phone picture. This was taken with the Canon. So I've got a picture similar to this that I did take with my phone, and because it was faster than getting the camera up, and they were a little bit closer. And they're almost identical picture, but you can tell the difference between this picture and that one if you had them side by side. On a small screen like your phone or Instagram, you wouldn't be able to tell, but as you made it, if we opened it up to this size, it would be a notable difference in quality. So something important to consider if you're thinking about, if pictures or photography or bare photos is something that's really important to you, you may want to consider, getting a camera, even if you're just renting it, that's going to be adequate for what you're looking to get out of your time there, Brooks, because it is a long wait, it's expensive, it's a lot of stuff. So you might want to just make sure that you've got the best possible gear that fits your budget. And there is like a limit. You don't need to spend 10 grand, but if you're going to rent something in a like retail price, typically between like 1,500 to 3,500 is probably going to be good. And we can kind of talk about that. I did give a couple of recommendations if you want to rent from Anchorage specifically. I don't have any personal affiliation there, but I can make the suggestion. So here's a overlook of the Naknek River. So this is like early season, June 12th. So we're actually not even open yet when this picture was taken. But this is the Naknek. It's a very big, wide river. It does get about 2 million salmon annually. That's the high end. Lower end escapement goal is about 800,000. And some of those 800,000 fish will swim through the Naknek Lake and over to Brooks Camp. So quite the journey, actually. And they get fished for out in the bay. They don't fish in river. I see some of that stuff come up on the Facebook pages occasionally, like when there's not salmon there. Somebody says that the commercial fishing is impacting the number of fish at Brooks. It's managed quite actively and quite well. It's not like on Deadliest Catch, there's a quota where you have to catch so many. You're allowed to catch so many crabs, regardless of kind of what the actual availability of the total amount of species are. And there's an inaccurate way to count, or not a super accurate way to count that in real time. Here there is. They're actively counting fish on a daily basis, and they're either allowing or disallowing commercial fishing operations to take place in front of this river out in the bay, because it's not it's not really like at the mouth of the river. There's a distance and a marker. While there is some in river fishing that happens with smaller nets, shorter nets, really, um, that is controlled. It's actively controlled on a day by day basis based on the amount of fish that are passing the escapement counter. And so when I see people say that it's because of the commercial fishing operation, the truth is that that's inaccurate. If the count was low on a certain date, then they'll prevent commercial fishing operations from happening for a period of time to make sure that we're meeting the historical escapement number. So let's just say the run typically starts sometime the last week of June, but numbers don't really pick up till the first week of July. And so if we were into week 2 of July, like let's say July 10th, and we were, maybe 100,000 fish behind escapement, maybe 200,000 fish behind escapement, they'll actively have like a 12 hour or 24-hour closure. So there's no fishing that takes place in this district for this river, so that some of those fish can make it through on a couple of, because they typically swim in with the tide. So they'll swim through on the tides and make their way upriver. So it does. There is a delay period. So once that happens, those fish do still have to swim roughly 60 miles or so through the river. It's not a straight line 60 miles, but we'll call it between 40 and 60, depending on where they're at, to Brooks River, to the Brooks River. And so there is a little bit of a delay there, if that were to be the case, but it's not likely. So the Brooks River doesn't receive millions of these fish. They receive maybe a couple 100,000 of the sockeye salmon each summer. And this river produces about between 800,000 to 1.5 is the upper end escapement goal, but regularly we see somewhere between 1 million and 2 million over the course of July. And it is a very compressed run, but once they're present in the Brooks River and the Naknek River, they'll be there for the duration of the season. Some of them spawn in different areas. And so it'll take some time for them to kind of make their way all the way to the brooks, and some of them make it all the way to the lake, and some of them spawn in the river. And there's several other tributaries within Naknek Lake that those salmon are going to swim to. So the Brooks River is not the only place that gets fish. But I just thought I would talk about the Naknek River there for a minute. A little bit of a tangent, but that is, that is the river that the salmon are swimming through, and I can pull it up on a map so we can kind of have a better overview. But this is the view from the bed and breakfast from Katmai B&B, which we own and operate. So it is, a lot of people like staying here for that. You have this view from inside. We got big pane windows looking out over the river. And we do get about 12 feet of tide change right here. It's going to be difficult to see in this picture, but this will rise about 12 feet vertically during a tide in a normal summer year. So like this, we're still pretty chilly, not cold, but chilly in June. So we're not seeing a lot of runoff from the glaciers or snow melt yet. And then it needs to fill up the lake. And then as it comes out of the lake, it flows out into the Naknek, and it's not controlled in any way. So it is a free flowing river from the runoff all the way to the ocean. There are no man-made barriers, obviously, which is what makes it a productive fishery for the bears and for people. But there's no, so that river level will rise on its own. And so early season can be a little bit hairy. If you don't know the river, there can be some pretty shallow spots. But once we get into, let's say, late June and July, the river's basically normalized to a normal level. But we do experience 12 feet of tide change regardless of the actual river level here in front of the B&B. Now, this is definitely stretching the far end of what my camera can do. You probably can't even see it. There's an eagle that caught a super early fish over there. So this is June 18th, and it's not even a good picture, but I just couldn't get him in focus. He's so far away. It's about, I think, to the far side of the river. I want to say it's somewhere in the range of like 300 or 400 yards. And I'm shooting this. My longest lens is 500 millimeters, so too farther than I can see. For those of you joining us, welcome. I was a little late getting started today, so you guys haven't missed a whole lot. We've just been kind of talking about the Naknek River and the fish that come up it. And I'm showing you guys a picture here of an eagle that was too far for my camera, exceeded what my gear is really capable of doing, but it was probably one of the earliest fish I've seen an eagle catch, June 18th, which was like super right on the front end of the run. And it looks kind of big. I know it's probably hard to see there, but that fish looks pretty big compared to that eagle, and eagles are big. So I would guess it's probably a king salmon or a chinook and not a sockeye based on the size. But it could be a sockeye, but impossible for me to tell from this distance. I do see a lot of people ask about what lens length should I bring if you are bringing a camera. I had a conversation with a lady this week talking about if we should have, she needs to bring something wider, like a 20 to 75 or something like that. I would say that as we scroll through here, I can double check, but I don't think I shot anything in under 100 millimeters in length on the camera lens. So even this, what I would consider a landscape shot, and this is looking back over the bay just outside of Brooks. This is at 145, so it could be a little bit wider, but it certainly is not necessarily necessary to shoot super wide. And then of course once you're at Brooks, I think this bird's at 400. This people fishing 186. So yeah, just almost never close enough to anything to need something super wide. This one's probably hard to see, but there's a little trout here. Let me switch to a better. Here we go. So now the picture should be a little bigger and I'm less in the way. So this is a picture of the lower platform, and I kind of want to multitask here a little bit because we do get some people. The 4 people that are here watching, has anybody been to Brooks Camp before? Or is this your first time? If you guys just want to type it in the comments and let me know, I'll check it. Because I was going to bring up the map, but I don't want to tell you guys stuff you already know. If you kind of know what Brooks Camp layout looks like already. Skip through those. So here's another, so this is shot right at 100 millimeter focal length. This is looking back out over the bay. So this is the Brooks River down here in the lower half of the picture as it flows out into Naknek Lake. This is a different arm of Naknek Lake. It's actually really interesting geography right here. So this is only about 10 to 18 feet deep, depending where exactly you're at, but about not even a couple hundred yards past this area right here, it drops off to about 450 feet to as deep as 650 feet deep, just on the other side of this ridge here. And this whole bay is only about 20 feet deep, maybe 30 and like out in the middle. But yeah, it drops off really fast going out the other side. Hey Rick, well, I'm not gonna bring up the map for you if you sounds like you know what's there. There's a picture of a trout hanging out down below the pole. I don't know if we can see it real good, but I know I can bring up that contrast, drop the highlights a little bit, drop the shadows, I'll crop in on it a little bit. Let's see if we can make him stand out any better. Let's see, radial gradient, grab the fish. Let's invert that actually. We'll make everything else darker. We'll add one more. And we'll do the opposite here. Yeah, the way it's going to be kind of hard to see. They're very good at what they do. Just going to blend in there quite a bit. There's not much I can do to really brighten him up besides that. But he's right here if you guys can't see him. Let's see, what else is important to talk about? I did want to show you guys some early bear pictures. So let's bring up that data again. So this is June 22nd, and although he looks kind of small based on the no ears, this is probably 747. He's got like ears bit off or something. His ears are really unique, kind of stand out. This was the first picture I got of him all summer, and I'm pretty sure it was the same day. He just beat me up to the falls. So I'm standing on the on the lower platform here to get these photographs of 747. So I think that is kind of one of those things people ask, when does the bear viewing really begin? We begin operations on June 21st, specifically for this reason. Before June 21st, it can be really hit or miss on bears at Brooks Camp and bears at the falls. So this was the only bear at the falls all day on this day, and that's basically all we saw. And then it kind of picks up as you go into that last week of June. So it is intentional. People ask us why we open so late. Why does the lodge open basically a month before we do? If you're spending the night there, your probability, just because based on time, goes up. If you've got these early season dates, if you're not spending the night at Brooks Lodge and you're not prepared to sit outside somewhere and just watch for bears for most of your day while you're there, then I don't know. I would reconsider that, if that's going to be what you really are looking for. And if you're expecting bears at the falls, please don't. If you're going before June 20th, because there's just no fish there. And although 747 here is very dedicated, I don't think that he had much success this early in the season looking for fish at the falls. So it probably would be about another week for the fish to really show up. Sometime the first week of July, those very last few days of June, give or take, based on the season and based on the run. But definitely keep that in mind if you've got early season dates. Like, I wouldn't be heading up there before June 20th unless you had lots and lots of time there at Brooks Camp to spend watching for bears. And a day trip could be kind of hit or miss at this point, which is why we don't do them. Because we don't want people to go out to Brooks and spend all that time, effort, and energy and not see the bears, right? So that's why we start on the 21st, because we know with relative certainty there will be some. And then as that week picks up, and we're totally honest with everybody, just like I'm being honest with you here, I would rather not have anybody's business for those first 4 or 5 days than take people over there and not see bears. If that's all you've got, we'll do our best to make it happen, but I cannot guarantee or even want to promise with relative certainty that we'll see bears that early into June. So this is all the same day, and this is all the same bear. If you guys hadn't noticed, this is still 747 here with his little funky ears. And they're kind of out of order here. So these pictures were taken before he made it up to the falls. He's looking like he just woke up, that's for sure. And this is the lower part of the Brooks River. This water level will also rise significantly as summer goes on, not only just from rainfall, but also from some runoff from the mountains that are back there towards the, what is that, east. It's a cool bird. Again, not a lot of stuff to take pictures of on the second day of operations there, because there just isn't really a whole lot going on. A lot of the same bear. This is what they call the riffles. If you watch the webcams and you see the riffles cam, it's looking downriver from the falls. This is from the lower of the 2 platforms that are located near the falls. They call this the riffles platform, and this is looking downstream. And a lot of time we see people and the controversial fishermen that are there all the time, and here they are. There aren't many bears here at this point, but there were plenty of trout in the river when this picture was taken. So no salmon in there yet at this point, but there were certainly some trout present there at the Brooks River, which I showed in that picture earlier, and that was down near the lower bridge. So again, if anybody's joining us, please feel free to drop any questions, comments, anything that I can help you with as far as planning the trip to Katmai. In the comments, I will respond and do my best to kind of help you guys through that. I am just flipping through some pictures here of the bears in early June, which really in this case is the bear. There really weren't that many bears before June 20th, actually very few. And so I'm just kind of showing this one. And this is the first Beady Bunch sighting for us, June 23rd, and they're all looking pretty thin, obviously. This is probably my best favorite Beady Bunch picture that I took last year. While I do have lots of good ones of them doing their own thing, this is one of the few times that they were relatively close together, and I was able to document that through these two photographs. So now I'm into July 1st, and you'll kind of see as an uptick in bears starts to occur in the photographs, just the number of bears and the more frequent of the, the frequency of the pictures taken of the bears increases as we kind of push further into July. So that first week of July is really when the salmon started to show up, a few here and there, eventually until there's bears actively fishing for salmon at the falls, which looks like the first time I got a picture of that was July 3rd. That doesn't mean it didn't happen before, but actually fishing the lip, looks like July 3rd was the first time I got that picture. And of course, the bears use the entire river to navigate. Not all of the bears fish at the falls, so even if you're not seeing bears on the live cams present at the falls, doesn't mean there's no bears at the river. And I think that some people planning the trip watch those and communicate on that Facebook group talking about if there's bears and no bears, and they make the assumption based off of what is actually present on the webcams. The webcams, I would say, cover the most populated areas very well. What they don't show you is that they're probably only covering about, I don't know, maybe it's like between 10 to 25% of the total area that we likely are to see bears at Brooks Camp. And so there may be a little bit of a misrepresentation of what the season is shaping up to look like based on total bear numbers and bears that people see. And people make decisions based on what they're seeing on the cameras equates to when I should visit, and might I not see bears if I visit outside of those dates that people are like, well, you absolutely have to go on these dates. Well, sure, July is really good. If mid-July. This is July 3rd. So far, pictures of bears for July 3rd, I think I'm counting maybe 6 bears so far, just based on these pictures. I'm not double counting. We are like different bears. This is July 3rd, so this is a different sow and cub than the sow and cub that are at the falls. They didn't make it up the river very far. They crossed the river, and then they kept walking over to screen right from here, from our perspective. She fished the lip basically all day. We got lots of her and her cub. That's Chunk. So that was the first time I saw Chunk there at the falls, and then 747 was around as well. So I don't know, maybe 7 bears or so the first week of July. So this is July 3rd, and I didn't take pictures every single day, but so just to kind of give you guys an idea of, as we picked up. So when we were back in June, that last week of June, it was like 1 or 2 bears. And now as we move into the first week of July, it looks like July 3rd was about 7 bears that I saw. We're not counting these. We already counted her. This is the 3rd again. That's not Chunk down there, but it could be one of the bears from below. So we'll just leave it at 7. That's Chunk. And this is Chunk again, pursuing a female up and down the trail. And he did that quite a bit. Same bears here. So this is July 4th. Now we're on to 3 more bears down at the river, or down on the beach. I think it's... I'm not for sure if that's the Beady Bunch or not. This bear was chasing female bear around, and it's not Chunk. I can't remember who it was. But you can see as the bear activity here is just starting to really pick up. This is on the 4th. This bear, I can't remember her name or number, but she had just been emancipated by her mom this week, just a few days before, and so she's kind of exploring, and all of it's new. She hasn't been on her own before. Apparently playing on the beach was a big deal. This is July 8th. These 2 cubs are too small to be the Beady Bunch, so I know it's not them, but they did pose for quite a few pictures this day. Some quite good ones, honestly, especially that one right there in the middle once the stream here catches up. Like I said, if anybody has questions, comments, anything they'd like to see, like to talk about, please feel free to drop it in the comments. I can't answer your questions if you don't ask them. This is a two-way street. I know I do a lot of talking. You guys can't talk here in this format, but if you are interested in one-on-one time with me, we can do that. I will drop a link in the comments for you to schedule that time. Of course, you can email me or give us a call anytime if you've got questions that you're not comfortable asking here. But if you are thinking about coming back or planning your first trip, more than happy to help you do that, so that you can have that trip be a success. So here is... So I was quite busy with bookings for 2025 between these 2 dates, July 8th and the next time I was able to get some time off the boat. But obviously, between these 2 dates is really when the salmon started to arrive, and they were making, quite a bit of progress up to the falls, and you're going to see that. And this is, not to put any more pressure on mid-July, but it will happen, whether I say this or not. This would be the first time that I captured some fish jumping the falls last year around July 17th. They'd obviously been jumping for a few days before that, between the 8th and the 17th in that 9-day window, but this is the first time I got to spend some time up there, and I counted, and this can't even fit them all here in this picture, roughly 41 bears this day near the falls, which is, bear palooza, pretty crazy. Total number of bears this close together. I mean, when you find them anywhere else, they would not tolerate each other's presence with this kind of distance. And Chunk was certainly not present this day, which was actually probably one of the factors that led to there being this many bears present at the falls at once, because when Chunk was there, the number was significantly lower. That fish there, which I think is the fish you're probably referring to, is going to be a sockeye salmon. The one, I assume that we're talking about the one that's jumping. And you can let me know if I'm wrong here, Rick. But this is a sockeye salmon. He's been present in the river system for some time. You can see his hormonal changes are starting to take place, and he's starting to turn from that silver color to kind of a pink. You can tell that it's a sockeye because, one, the green head, and the tail here has no spots, or no very defined spots. So like a Chinook or a silver salmon, it's going to have spots present on the lobes here on the tail, and their heads are typically not green. So like Chinook, they turn basically all red, or kind of a brown if they're a smaller, immature male. Silver salmon also get kind of a reddish color, but it's a uniform color. You can see here on this sockeye that its head is starting to turn green. Too early in the change for me to know for sure if it would be a female or a male, but it could be either one at this point. But yeah, it's going to be a sockeye salmon. Yes, we'll see you in August, Elaine. Thanks for stopping by. If you're sticking around, great. If you got to go, not a problem. But yeah, we'll look forward to seeing you in August. And again, the show's every Thursday. I was a little late today because I was just late getting everything set up. But if you guys got questions about fish species, bears, camera gear, anything Katmai related, feel free to ask. But yeah, so hopefully that answers your question for you there, Rick. Oh, we got moved off. So July 17th, Bearpalooza. Chunk was not present, which really is kind of what led to this, huge number of bears being present at the falls because he wasn't there chasing other bears off, which is pretty normal for him. He does tolerate some bears, but evidently this was too much for him, and so he was not present that day, but he's pretty good at chasing them off. Here's some more bears fishing the lip and a couple salmon. Getting this picture is very difficult. If you haven't tried it, your best bet to get it for sure would be to video and then screenshot. It won't be as crisp as getting the actual photo, and it's certainly not as challenging, but that's just kind of an option for you. I did get some, pictures of the bears with the fish, and I do shoot in RAW. So a lot of these come in a really flat profile and they require some editing later to get really the pictures that we're used to seeing of the bears. So we will kind of do that right now just so you guys can see how that happens. Let's go ahead and highlight the bears. I apologize. 1 second. Oh, hey, thanks, Rick. I apologize. Thanks for letting me know. Should be back up now. So I was saying here on this picture is just, be realistic about what you're expecting. when you're taking photographs and why your pictures might not look like the stuff you see on Instagram. And that's typically because there's a little bit of editing going on, or in some cases a lot. So here was the picture I took, relatively flat, no blue, colors are super dull, and this was post just after like 2 or 3 minutes of editing. You obviously could play with this a lot more and push it a little bit further. But I think that sometimes people set unrealistic expectations of what their pictures look like compared to what other people's pictures look like. And I don't think that that's necessarily fair, right? So just kind of showing you guys how I do that and how you can do that for your own pictures. Lightroom on the phones, like, I don't know, I think it's like $3 a month, or if you want to get it on the computer, if you have a computer that can run it, it's like $9 a month, and you can use this. There are some free editing programs, and most phones have something where you can kind of push the pictures around a little bit and get something that, you know, might work for you. But just know that if your picture comes out looking like that, that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. Just know that, you know, those other pictures you might be comparing yours to, there's probably a little bit or a lot of editing going on to make them happen. So like this looks like a super classic, you know, bear at Brooks Falls picture. This is something that we would see something posted online, and there's going to be some editing that takes place to really give those bears and the water the color that you're expecting. The bears look like they're probably exposed correctly here. I'm going to give them a little bit of contrast. We'll drop those shadows a little bit. We'll bring up the highlights on their back so you can really tell where the sun's hitting them. I'm going to bring up the temperature a little bit so it's a little bit warmer. We will saturate them a little bit, and then I will add another mask, and we'll invert that one so we're editing around the bears. We want to give that water that cool tone. We're going to want to make it probably a little bit darker. Going to bring the contrast up, which will really kind of help us cut through the glare on the top of the water there. Highlights, we don't need them super bright. Shadows, probably bring them up a little bit. The water's already pretty dark. Lots of white going on. Black, I bring up a little bit again. And then for the color on the water, we can push this. So like just to show you an extreme, like here's that fish obviously looks a little funny, that blue, but like if you wanted like really cool looking water and you didn't like necessarily the color that it was, you can do all kinds of stuff. This is what I see online. You know, I see people push pictures pretty far, and then other people like I couldn't get that picture, or it's in my phone or whatever. And to be honest with you, it's none of those things. It honestly is just people pushing the Photoshop or the editing quite a bit to get the pictures that they're looking for. And so I just don't want you guys to have unrealistic expectation. I'd be like, because you probably took a great picture and you could make it look the way that theirs looks. You just need to know how to do it. There's not a whole lot to it really. More is typically less in my philosophy when I'm editing pictures. Obviously we could like oversaturate the whole photo, which I'll show you guys how to do. So like if we bring this way up, like a lot of times, like this is the type of stuff I see posted on Instagram, you know, where it's like super, super saturated, you know, beyond what is real, you know, is real. Let's take all that off. That I feel like that's comfortable. That's a good compromise between the flat profile that it was here and a little bit overexposed, you know, over here on this side where that fish is at, and it's probably still a little bit overexposed. There's not a lot of detail over here where the water is hitting the lower part of the river there. So just something to keep in mind when you're at Brooks taking your photos. Like this one's like super, super iconic. And I've pushed this one pretty far, right? So like let's look at the original. So super overexposed, profile super flat. There's almost no detail at all down there in the fish, in the water, and then you can bring a lot of that back. You can see how much detail there is here in the falls, just with some editing, and I've pushed it, you know, pretty significantly. You can't see my controls on here, but so just to give you an idea, like you could take a relatively bland picture like that one and turn it into something that I would feel comfortable hanging in somebody's home. So just keep that in mind. Does anybody have any questions about camera gear, bears, fish, anything like that? Oh, and Rick, this is also a sockeye salmon here in his bright chrome colors. This fish has only been present in the freshwater for a couple days, maybe a week or two at most, but not very long. So he's still got a lot of that natural shine and color to him. So also a sockeye salmon. Here's another one. He didn't make it. But yeah, if anybody's got any questions, feel free to ask away. I will drop a link for to get access to some one-on-one time. If anybody's interested in scheduling that time with me, they can, and we can talk about whatever. That's bear pictures or planning the trip or anything like that. I will put it in the chat here where you guys can have access to that. I am going to kind of start to wrap things up here. Typically go for about an hour. So if anybody wants to schedule time with me, you can do that through that link there. I also will put the link to all of the Katmai Adventure Co stuff that we do, including the links back here to the live stream if you guys want to rewatch this later, or if you want to jump on some other time for a call or the webinar. If you are planning a trip to Katmai, if you're watching this later, because I don't think anybody here hasn't been, but if you are planning the trip, we do host monthly webinars. You can get to that through one of those links. And the next one would be like that last week of February. It should be scheduled probably for the 21st. And it'll be at 6 p.m. Mountain Time is when we'll host that one. I may change that date slightly. I think there's a couple people signed up for it now. I don't want to do it if there are too many people signed up, but if you haven't, it'll be the third week of February on a Friday at 6 p.m. And I'll host a live stream still every week on Thursday. So if you guys have any questions, feel free to ask them. If not, I really appreciate you guys all being here. Hopefully you learned something or at least enjoyed looking at the bear pictures from the 25 season. And I look forward to seeing you guys next week. Again, this is every Thursday, 5 o'clock for about an hour, give or take. Bring your questions. If you know somebody who would benefit from seeing this stuff, or if you want to share this to the Katmai Facebook page, I really would appreciate that. I try not to self-promote over there, but if you found it beneficial and you think other people would enjoy it, I certainly would appreciate you guys sharing that, because we do this totally for free. But I do like showing you guys the pictures, and I do like talking about Katmai in Alaska, so that's why we do it. So I think that's basically it, guys. I appreciate you guys being here. Does anybody have any questions before I kind of shut down the stream here for the day? Feel free to put them in the comments. If you're rewatching later and you have a question about something, put it in there. We will get notified, and someone from the team will get back to you if it's not me personally. So I appreciate you guys all being here, and I will see you guys next week.